Bible Ladies Brunch Bunch, we're going to answer a few questions about Mary Magdalene. Was she Jesus' wife? Was she a prostitute? Did she have 7 demons? We're going to talk about that and a few more. And I'm also going to give you a recipe for a yummy old-fashioned apple pudding circa 1936. I'll see you in a minute, my friends. It has been a long afternoon, and I am more than happy to have Bible study with you today. But I have filmed this stinking thing like 3 or 4 times. I'm not sure how many times I've filmed it, but I have filmed it on and on and on and on again. And I can't tell you. One time I didn't have the sound plugged in. You know, another time I got interrupted. It has just been all over the place. But we're here, and it's fall here. Of course, if you are watching this months later, just know when I film this is fall. This is number 6 of our 8-week series on the women of the Bible for our Bible Ladies Brunch Bunch, and we are now moving into the New Testament. We're going to be in the Gospels today, and we're going to be talking about Mary Magdalene, and we're going to be reading some of her story. We're also going to be reading some and a few commentaries that I have, but we're going to put her all in context and find out more about her as much as we can anyway. So I do want to point you to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to organize my notes here. I'm going to point you to the my blog. There will be a $5 charge for whining, and I have had that blog a number of years. The link I'm going to give you below in the description box is actually the corresponding blog post to this video, and it's got all the scripture printables that you will need and some study journaling notes stuff. It's also got the recipe for the apple pudding, the old-fashioned apple pudding, which I'll share with you in a minute. So I suggest you look at that. This week I am going to be posting a little fall home tour, just kind of showing you some bits and pieces of the parsonage. I did not overtly decorate for fall this year. I needed a simpler life, and so I want to show you some of what I did. Most of everything I have in my home is thrifted, found, given, handmade, etc. So I wanted to show you just bits and pieces of the parsonage, and so that will be coming on my blog and this vlog and etc, etc. Okay, so we're going to start with Mary Magdalene. We are now moving into the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and we are going to be talking about Mary Magdalene. It was really hard because at first I wanted to talk about Mary and Martha. We know about Mary and Martha, but my ladies actually did a whole Bible study about Mary and Martha this last year, and it's from Joanna Weaver. I'll be sure to try and link it down below. It is so good. So we're going to talk about Mary Magdalene. She is mentioned quite a few times in the scriptures. A lot of them, though, are just the same stories. Like the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John will mention her, like at the cross. They will all mention her. So it's not that we get a huge, big picture of her background and interactions with everybody, but we do see that she's very important in scripture, very important to the ministry of Jesus Christ. So we're going to start in Luke 8:1-3. I'm going to read this bit about you. I'm reading out of, I think it's the King James Version. I don't have my NIV in here. I've been reading out of that some, but we're going to go ahead and go with what I have on print, which is quite large letters, which I need today. All right. Soon afterward, he went on through the cities and villages, preaching and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. And of course, he talking about is Jesus. And the 12 were with him. That's talking about the 12 disciples. And also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out. And Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others who provided for them out of their means. So, this is our first introduction to Mary Magdalene. I'm going to read to you a little bit of this is from Women of the Bible, All Women of the Bible. And let's see. This Mary, she was distinguished from all the others. There's a lot of Marys in the Bible. And she's distinguished by called the Magdalene, which identifies her with her place of birth, just as Jesus was called the Nazarene because of his association with Nazareth. Magdala means tower or castle, and at the time of Christ was a thriving populous town on the coast of Galilee, about 3 miles from Capernaum. Dye works and primitive textile factories added to the wealth of the community. It may be that the Magdalene was connected with the industry of the town, for it would seem that she was not without means, enabling her to serve the Lord with her substance. Now, we don't know her family connections. We don't know about her mama and her daddy, any of that kind of stuff. The Bible doesn't talk about that. But then we've got the 7 demons. The 7 devils actually is the King James Version says it. And I'm going to read you this little paragraph from the same work. It's called All Women of the Bible. And it says, although Mary was a woman of high standing and comfortable circumstances, she suffered from the malady of periodic insanity. For the 7 devils, we should read 7 demons. There is only 1 devil, and 1 is more than enough, but there are legions of demons or roaming fallen angels who possessed men and women and still do. 7 is a mystic number suggesting completeness, implying that when the evil spirits dominated Mary, the suffering was extremely severe. Afflicted with nervousness, she may have been the victim of violent epilepsy, and when Jesus saw her with her peace of mind and control of will destroyed, she must have been revolting object to look at, with her disheveled hair, glaring eyes, and sunken cheeks. Her demonic possession did not infect her morals, only her mind. Badness of character did not ensue, only the derangement of her mental facilities. Sometimes love, misplaced and guilty love, has destroyed many women, first leading to insanity and then to suicide. Some women, too, become victims of insanity by inheritance. What weakness Mary may have had, making it easy for demons to enter her, we are not told. This we do know: they met their master in him who came to destroy the works of the devil. Now, I do need to make clear, I truly believe in people can be demonic oppressed, demonic possessed, and I absolutely believe that the Bible talked about demonic possessions. It absolutely was demonic possession. I do not, however, believe that if you are ill in any way, that is because a demon is inhabiting you or possessing you. I know, as someone who has dealt with chronic illness almost my whole entire adult life, I have heard it all. I've heard that I must be sick because I'm doing something wrong and I have sin in my life, or I must be sick because I'm not really saved. All of those kinds of things. I've heard it all. And I do not, for the life of me, believe that all sickness is produced by evil. We do live in a fallen world. We live in a sinful world. If Adam and Eve hadn't been kicked out of the garden, I probably wouldn't have been in congestive heart failure. I probably would have had loads of children and no barren womb. But there's just some things that happen to all of us. We die. We get old and our bodies fall apart and we die. So I don't want anyone to ever tell you that what you're suffering is because of something you yourself is doing. Now, if you are I'll be honest about this. I am diabetic. So and let's be honest about this, I am a heavy diabetic at this point in my life. I am morbidly obese, and that's even hard for me to say this. And there are some of you and some people out there who would look at me and go, girl, you are not doing what you need to do for yourself. I agree, absolutely. I agree, absolutely. There are other factors involved, but I also know as a diabetic, if I go out and I make myself a chocolate cake and decide to sit down and snack the whole thing, it is not going to do any good for my diabetes. So therefore, there are some things that we are not doing very good for ourselves. We are in wrong kinds of relationships. We are, we have addictive habits that aren't good for ourselves. I'm getting really preachy here. So obviously there are some things that we have in our lives that aren't good for us. There are things that can contribute to our decline in physical health, obviously, that we can do. However, there are also some things that we aren't necessarily know about in the spirit world that keep us oppressed, keep us depressed. You can be the most physically fit person in the world and have some kind of mental illness that is keeping you handicapped. Now, I'm not going to say it's demonic oppression and possession. That certainly can happen, but I'm not going to lay that one on you. What I'm saying is that there sometimes life happens. And Mary Magdalene, in her case, it was a matter of being delivered. And sometimes we we need to be delivered of old habits, of old thought processes, of old self-destructive behaviors for us to have new lives. And I believe when this happened to her, when she was delivered, she became a new woman. She became just absolutely enlightened. And she was going to do what it took to spread this man's word. And it meant up giving of herself, giving of her monies and her times, her time, not her times, 2 + 2, but she was going to do it. And I want that same fervor in my life, that what God has brought me out of, what God has brought me through. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. So the next time we see Mary Magdalene, she's at the crucifixion, and I'm going to give you the scripture for this. I'm not going to actually read it. She's found in Mark 15:40-41, Luke 23:49, Matthew 27:55 and 56, John 19:25. So it talks about the women that came and stood before the cross while Jesus was being crucified. I can't even imagine what that would have been like, how heart-wrenching that would have been, and how horribly awful. You imagine the nightmares and the dread that occurred on that day. There have been, throughout history, we've kind of looked at the disciples on that day and thought, oh, you bunch of wimps letting the women, stand before the cross. I do think, though, they were in serious fear of their life, and I don't blame them at all, and I'm telling you, that whole scene, I know all of us have seen a passion play or a movie depicting the death of Christ. Horrible, horrifying. And so Mary was there. Now Mark mentions her by name, John mentions her by name, so we know she was there. Now after Jesus had died and they take him down for the cross, we know Josephus donated a tomb for him to be buried in. And so the women came and they prepared all the spices for him and dressed him for burial. And let's see, where was that at? And so we know that happened. Now the resurrection, this is Mark 8:16-1-11, Luke 24:1-11, Matthew 28:1-10, John 20:1-18. And it talks about how they were going to go. This is after the Sabbath. Their Sabbath was Saturday. They had rested that day and they were coming back on Sunday. And they came and were going to bring spices, and lo and behold, the tomb's empty, and there's somebody there saying, don't know where he is. Now, the Gospel of John talks a little bit more in depth about that situation, about how Peter and John, she went back and she said that Jesus is not there, and then Peter and John rushed to see who was there. And then they went away, the tomb was empty, so they went back home, and all of a sudden Mary sees Jesus. And this is in, we're going to look down, we're in John 20, verse 11. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb as she wept and stooped to look into the tomb. And she saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "Because they have taken away my Lord. And I do not know where they have laid him." Saying this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping, and whom do you seek?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary," and she turned to him and said in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brethren and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and said to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them, and he said these things to her. So what an amazing testimony. She was the first that he chose to reveal himself to. And you know, you got to wonder why. Why was it? Because he knew her heart and knew she would be more believing? I think too, when you have gone through things like she had gone through, the oppression and possession, the physical and mental frailties that she had, and then to be released from that, anything was possible for her with this man. And I believe that's why she was in a position to absolutely receive him there. Okay, so later on, we don't hear much about Mary Magdalene. There's a lot of theories why. Now, I believe it's the Greek Orthodox Church. If I'm wrong, I'll put it down here. They actually consider Mary to be an apostle. In the early church, though, her legacy kind of went by the wayside, and some believe it's because of the way the church, you know, how they treated women. So we're going to read a little bit about that. Let me find. It says, in a sermon delivered in AD 591, the Pope gave the Roman Catholic Church's official sanction into the view that Mary Magdalene was the promiscuous woman with alabaster jar whom Jesus had redeemed. And this is Pope Gregory the Great. Then he also talked about Mary Bethany. She ended up in the mix because in John's Gospel she anoints Christ's feet before the Passion. The sermon transferred Mary Magdalene into the bad girl of the Gospels, and his interpretation prevailed in Western Christianity for nearly 1400 years. That was especially apparent in religious art. Now, if you've noticed throughout the Bible studies, I haven't mentioned this since the first one, but I'm putting and including some classic works of art throughout the ages of these women that we've talked about. Obviously, I know that these ladies weren't buxom and blue-eyed and blonde hair, and they could have been buxom, but they were not pale such as me, and they certainly didn't wear ball gowns. But I think they're beautiful art, and it's also interesting to consider how they are portrayed. As far as, now keep in mind, this particular what they're talking about was in the Middle Ages. It's not known for its women in ministry. Okay, let's just put it that way. Said, so this is especially apparent in religious art. Throughout the Middle Ages, miracle plays and pictures frequently showed Magdalene as weeping for her sins. This image of later penitent and mostly naked Magdalene provided a popular one with artists such as the Renaissance painter Titian. I know who we're talking about. I just don't know how to pronounce his name. Joan Baldwin, an art historian in Little Rock, Arkansas, said this image of Mary Magdalene gave artists an excuse to paint a sexy pinup. She became sort of the Marilyn Monroe of the 16th century. So it really wasn't until 1969 that the Roman Catholic Church officially separated Luke's sinful woman, Mary of Bethany, and Mary Magdalene into three distinct women during a revision of its missal. This is a book containing services of the Mass throughout the year. Okay, but even in Mel Gibson's The Passions of the Christ, and I know lots of you have watched that, so don't be telling me, Mary Magdalene was still shown as an ex-prostitute. So it took a lot of, it took a lot of years to disclaim, because of a church official saying, well, this is probably what she was, and people just took that as gospel. Anyway, it says, meanwhile, other legends developed about Magdalene's life after the Ascension. One common story is that she sailed away with Martha and Lazarus and spent the rest of her life in a cave, repenting of her decadent life. As years passed and the story went, her clothes dwindled into rags and she had nothing to cover her but her long curly hair. Alrighty. I think from what I've read is that gentlemen of a certain church officials and scholars of a certain time period and had a hard time reconciling that a woman played such a significant part in Jesus's ministry, but there had to be some reason. There had to be some reason. Was they really were they really, maybe there's a romantic involvement, they thought it would be a better story. I don't know. The deal is that unless the Bible really talks about it, that's not something we can speculate on. And we do know the Bible never says that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, nor was she a wife or girlfriend of Jesus Christ. In fact, Jesus did not have any wife or girlfriend or boyfriend for that matter. But let's talk about Mary's legacy to us as women. It's the fact that God took her where she was. Jesus took her where she was, and he completed such a miraculous work in her heart that she was changed forever. And I think sometimes I know that there's a lot of times I want that instantaneous healing, that sometimes I forget about the healing that God has done in my heart. For all intents and purposes, I should be, is that how you say it? Intents and purposes. For all purposes, I should be a bitter old woman. I should be angry. I should be scared of my own shadow. After my car wreck, I had a car wreck in 1996, and it was devastating. It changed my life forever. It changed the physiology of my body. I mean, it broke a ton of stuff. I had to learn to walk again. And I developed PTSD, and it was, to know me, you know that I'm fairly laid back. I'm really laid back, and even more so before my car accident. And I went from a girl who was pretty at ease to somebody who could drive down the road without screaming bloody murder, because just all of this stuff just came back to me, and I'm fairly in control. I mean, that was just horrifying to me. And I think a lot of things had to happen. I had to accept help. I had to admit that this was something that I couldn't fix on my own. I also had to let God do his work in my heart. I had to come to terms with the loss of my functionality of my body. And I think, though, of what God has done in my heart, it's been a long journey. As I said, I would love that kind of instant healing that Mary had. But I've had healing nonetheless. And the fact that I am still alive at 48 with a wonky heart and a wonky hip is a great testament to God's faithfulness in my life. He has kept me, and he has kept me in fairly a good mood. And I appreciate that so much about him. I've learned a lot. I've learned a whole lot. And I You know, we all have a tendency to feel sorry for ourselves. We have a tendency to retreat into ourselves. I do, at least. You know, I am not an extrovert. I'm very, very much an introvert. And when the going gets tough, the tough likes to crawl up in the corner with a book and ignore the world. But I want to encourage you today to start looking at what God has done in your life, rejoicing in those, and going after Him with your whole heart, giving Him all of your resources. I really thought about this lesson, and I thought about those 7 scars, those demonic scars. I'm not going to call them demonic in my case, but those scars of my life that I've carried around and have let stop me in fulfilling what I felt like God has had for my life. We keep going. We keep working, and we give Him our all. And what a special lady this lady was. And I hope that you take some encouragement. That I would encourage you to go through and jot down the scriptures that I've given you. I'm going to try and include them in our final book of notes. It won't be ready this week, but in our final book of notes, I've got some notes written down with scriptures that I'm going to make a little booklet of, so you can go back and do some more further study. Next week, we're going to continue on in Ladies of the Bible, and we're going to finish our last 2 with talking about 2 ladies in the early church, 2 significant ladies in the early church. And I'm also going to be next week I'm going to give you a recipe for some cheesy grits, baked grits. If you are not from the South, you are missing it. You are missing it. So but in the meantime, I'm going to I'm going to give you a recipe for the old-fashioned bread pudding. I'll mention this in the recipe, but I said last week I found the card in my great-grandma's stuff, which it was in, but the handwriting is my mom's. But it's on an old card, and it has on it 1936. I did have to look up and kind of clarify a few things about the recipe, because, you know, some of the old recipes were kind of vague. And I need a little more instruction when it comes to baked goods. But anyway, I'm going to take you over there, and you enjoy that recipe, and I will see you in a minute.
This is my recipe for old-fashioned apple pudding. Granted, this is really not a brunch recipe, but you can't really beat it. You'll need a flour, baking powder, white sugar, salt, milk, butter, apples, brown sugar, cinnamon, hot water, and more butter.
Alexa, play relaxing music.
Here's a playlist you might like. Relaxing Classical on Amazon Music.
I'm telling you, need that relaxing music. It had been quite a day, and this is the second time I made this recipe and filmed it for you. I actually found the recipe card in a old box that had some of my great-grandmother's recipes in it, and I was really curious about it. So I kind of looked around. It was in my mom's handwriting, but you could tell it was actually from my great-grandmother, and it was written in such a way that some of those old-timey recipes were written in. It didn't give very many instructions, you know what I'm saying? And there seemed to be a few steps missing. So it looked kind of like a recipe for an old-fashioned hot fudge pudding cake, if you're familiar with those. Here you can see, yep, there you go. Somebody stole the apple. Anyway, so I tried it twice, making it 2 different ways, and this is the way that really turned out the best. So I'm sharing that with you right now. I've peeled 4 apples instead of the 3 on the menu list, but these are small, so I figured adding 1 more for good measure would do me good. So all I'm doing is I'm going to slice the apples into that Pyrex pie dish. I almost used a old-fashioned old pie plate that belongs with a set of dishes I have, old dishes. But I'm glad I used this one because it wound up needing a little more room. I'm also grumbling about my knife I'm using, this paring knife. It is not my best paring knife, but I couldn't find the little red one I normally use. I'm afraid it's been confiscated for other uses apparently. So I'm hacking away at these apples. They're not perfectly sliced. I'm just making them nice enough to eat. Now I'm going to fill up my kettle. The recipe ends by covering the whole thing with hot water and boiling hot water. So the best thing you can do is just put on your kettle while you're actually making the dish itself, so the water will be nice and hot by the time you need it. You can certainly boil the water in the microwave, but I have found using my kettle is a lot more fun. So I've finished doing my apples, and they're nice and spread out in the Pyrex dish, and now I'm going to make the batter. Now this batter only uses a cup of flour, and it is pretty thick. Now I'm going to put some baking powder in it and a little bit of salt. Now I'm going to use my whisk, kind of whisk it together. At this point, I also realized that it calls for some white sugar in the actual batter itself. And now this recipe is going to be very, very sweet. So I don't add as much, and I also, because my sugar was up above my cabinets, I decided to go the easy way and use some Splenda that was in the jar right next to my Keurig. Now this particular recipe that I'm making is not health food. So the fact that I'm using Splenda only had to do more about me getting down the sugar. Now this calls for a half a cup of milk. You're going to be tempted to add a little more, but you really don't need to. It's going to start getting kind of heavy. And I do wind up using 2 tablespoons of melted butter, but you don't see that. Now I'm going to sprinkle brown sugar, a whole cup of brown sugar, over the top of those apples. Actually, the batter goes first. You can see it's kind of thick. So I'm going to spread it out over the apples. Put away my milk. And now we stare at my Keurig and a little ceramic squirrel pot. Squirrel jar. Okay, we fixed it. We've got some brown sugar, and there's a whole cup over that, and all I'm going to do is spread it out over the top of the batter. Put a few things away. And I'm going to grab my cinnamon. That's my little cinnamon jar. I keep it out all the time because I have it in my coffee every morning. Just going to healthily shake the cinnamon. And it would really be good with nutmeg too. But I didn't think about that until after I'd made it. Now what's going to happen is magic. I'm using the same cup, no you don't have to, that I did the sugar in, and I'm spreading hot water, 1 cup of hot water, over the entire batter, apples, sugar mess. and I'm not going to stir it. I'm just going to let it sit. You see there's steaming off of it. I'm going to stick it in the oven at 350 degrees, but I'm also going to put it on a cookie sheet because keep in mind, you've got the water in there and the apples are also going to release some moisture. What you don't see is me adding some more butter. Yes, some more butter on the top of that, which I do, but I don't film it. So here's the finished result. You can see it bubbling around the corners. I would let it sit just for a few minutes because all of that becomes nice. It becomes like a caramel sauce. You see it? We served it with a little whipped topping and some cinnamon. Perfect.
So I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson, and I hope you get a chance to fix some of that old-fashioned apple pudding. It's a perfect fall cozy dish. So until next week, I hope you do beautiful things, have a beautiful week, hug your people, breathe in, breathe out. You're doing just fine. I'll see you next week.